The kidnappers sent a video, and my son was crying out, "Mom, save me." But my husband stammered, saying there was not a penny left in the account. I checked the transfer records. Last night at dawn, he transferred a full $500,000 to an account marked Little Moon. Facing my questioning, he knelt down with red eyes. "Her son needs heart surgery." I really couldn't bear it. I gently helped him up and softly wiped away his tears. "It's okay, I just told the kidnappers, let them kill him." "What did you just say?" Harrison stared at me in shock, as if he hadn't heard me clearly. I said, "I already told the kidnappers they can kill him." My tone was calm, as if I were talking about today's weather. "Are you crazy? That's our son. Our Ethan." Harrison suddenly grabbed my arm, his voice hoarse as he shouted, his eyes full of terror and disbelief. I gently broke free from his hand and walked to the coffee table to pour myself a glass of water. "Otherwise? Do we have money now?" I took a sip of water and looked at him coldly. "Didn't you say there wasn't a single cent in the account?" Harrison fumbled to take out his phone, his hands shaking like a sieve. "I'll contact the kidnappers right now, I'll figure something out." "Do you think the kidnappers will wait for you to slowly gather the money?" I cut him off directly. "Or do you want to call the police? Let them cut off Ethan's fingers first?" "Are you sure?" Harrison froze, and his phone dropped to the ground with a clatter. Seeing his desperate and helpless look, a scene from a few years ago flashed uncontrollably through my mind. Back then, he had just failed in his startup, buried in debt, kneeling in front of me like this, holding my hand, swearing, "Wife, trust me one more time. When I succeed, I will make sure you and our son live the best life. I swear, I will always put you first." Now, it really is a joke. At that moment, Harrison's phone rang. He picked it up as if shocked by electricity and put it on speaker. "Have you thought it over?" A hoarse voice came from the other end of the line. 3 hours. If we don't see the money, don't blame us for being rude." Then Ethan's crying came through, "Mom. Dad, save me. I'm so scared. My heart feels like it's being twisted by a knife, but my face remains cold as ice." "Got it, when the time comes, you all take action. We have no money." After I said this, I hung up the phone. Harrison almost knelt down, his face full of despair. "Snow, are you really crazy? That's our only child." I turned to him, "Now you know how to save the child? When you transferred all our savings to Little Moon back then, why didn't you think about the child? Now Ethan is just paying the price for your choice." Harrison held his head and cried bitterly, "I beg you, Snow, there must be a way, don't give up on Ethan." I looked at this man who once said he would shelter me and our son from the wind and rain, but because of a Little Moon, he transferred all our money away, putting our son in danger. My heart completely turned cold as I quietly watched him trembling while calling his parents-in-law. When my parents-in-law arrived, I was rummaging through clothes in the wardrobe. "Daughter-in-law. What are you doing? Our grandson has been kidnapped, and you're actually packing clothes?" My mother-in-law's sharp voice felt like a knife stabbing into my back. I didn't even turn my head and kept stuffing shirts into the suitcase. "Packing some things, might need to go out." "Go out? Go where?" My father-in-law was so angry his mustache curled up. "Ethan is still in the kidnappers' hands." My mother-in-law grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "What on earth is going on? Where's the money? Why aren't you using the money to save the child?" I shook off her hand and looked coldly at the old couple. "No money left, not a single cent." "How could there be no money?" my mother-in-law screamed. "Didn't you just sell a house? That was over $1 million. Where's the money? You should ask your good son." I picked up my phone and swiped twice on the screen to bring up the transfer records. After the house payment arrived, we paid off $500,000 of the mortgage on this house. Logically, there should be $500,000 left, but last night at dawn, your son transferred all the money away. Harrison's face instantly turned pale, like a corpse crawling out of a grave. "Who did you transfer it to?" Mother-in-law asked suspiciously. I said slowly. At 3 o'clock in the early morning yesterday, 500,000 was transferred to Little Moon. If this money were still there, maybe Ethan could be saved now. Who is Little Moon? Father-in-law looked confused. Harrison hurriedly interrupted. She is a colleague from the company, her son is sick. I just lent her the money for emergency. Oh? I sneered. Just lent? Then why don't you ask her to return it to save your son? Mother-in-law grabbed Harrison's arm. Son, what is going on? Your son is almost dying, and you are still thinking about a colleague? Hurry up and get the money back. Harrison stammered and couldn't say a word, sweat beads on his forehead as big as soybeans. Did you hear that? Mother-in-law suddenly pushed Harrison, saying, This is all you're doing. What now? What now? Father-in-law was trembling with anger, pointing at Harrison and scolding, Ungrateful son. You really want to drive me crazy. Just then, Harrison's phone rang again. He fumbled to answer it and put it on speaker. The kidnapper's hoarse voice came through, I'll give you 1 hour. If I don't see the money by then, this child won't be going home intact. Then Ethan's faint voice came through, Dad. Mom. I'm so cold. A cold laugh sounded from the other end of the phone, then the call was disconnected. Grandma collapsed to the ground on the spot, crying out loud, My Ethan, what sin have you committed? Grandpa was so anxious he kept stomping his feet. Quick. Think of something. We still have the house, hurry and mortgage it. Harrison grabbed his hair and paced around the room like a madman. It's too late, it's simply too late. I looked at the chaotic scene and sent a voice message to the kidnappers. I told you, just kill the kid, we don't have a single cent. 3 pairs of terrified eyes stared at me in unison. You, what are you doing? Harrison stammered. I gave a cold laugh and threw the phone onto the sofa. What's the rush? Maybe a miracle will happen? My mother-in-law trembled with anger. You wicked woman. What exactly do you want to do? That is your own son. I walked to the window, looking at the sunlight outside. Yes, he is the one I carried for 10 months and gave birth to, so I know better than anyone else what a mother can do for her son. Just as the living room was in chaos, with Harrison being scolded harshly by his parents and on the verge of breaking down, the doorbell rang again at an inconvenient time. I went to open the door, and outside stood a young woman with exquisite makeup, wearing a Chanel suit, but unable to hide her anxious and aggrieved expression. She was Luna, the Little Moon noted in Harrison's phone. Where is Harrison? Why isn't he answering my calls? Didn't he promise to give me the remaining money today? My son is waiting for this money to have surgery. As soon as Luna entered, she was stunned by the scene in the living room, but quickly started questioning loudly, her voice trembling with tears. What are you doing here? Seeing Luna, Harrison looked as if he had seen a ghost, his face pale, and he instinctively tried to push her out. The in-laws were also shocked, looking at Luna and then at their guilty son. They clearly understood what was happening. Who is she? Harrison. Who is she? The mother-in-law pointed at Luna, trembling with anger. Auntie, you are Harrison's mother, right? Luna seemed to ignore Harrison's signal for her to leave, instead looking at the mother-in-law with tearful eyes. I am Luna, and Harrison and I truly love each other. He gave me 500,000 yesterday, saying it was for my son's heart surgery, but it's still not enough. Shut up. Harrison shouted harshly, trying to cover Luna's mouth. Let her speak. The mother-in-law pushed Harrison aside and stared firmly at Luna. 500,000? The money to save my grandson's life, you used it for someone else's son's surgery? The truth was revealed in the most embarrassing way. The father-in-law clutched his chest in anger and almost fainted. I don't know what happened to your grandson. Luna was intimidated by her mother-in-law's aura, but she still forced herself to argue back. But Devin is also Harrison's child, your grandson. He promised to take care of us mother and son. The air in the living room seemed to freeze, and everyone stared wide-eyed at Luna. What did you say? Devin is Harrison's child? The mother-in-law's voice was as sharp as glass scratching, her whole body trembling. Harrison. Is this true? Harrison looked like a mouse that had its tail stepped on, shrinking in the corner, opening his mouth but not able to say a word. Of course it's true. Luna straightened her chest, tears shining in her eyes. Harrison and I were together in college, but we broke up because of family opposition. 3 years ago, we ran into each other at a reunion. He said his marriage was unhappy, so we... Shut up. Harrison finally shouted, his face flushed red. Now is not the time to talk about this. Ethan has been kidnapped, we have to find a way to save him. But the money has already been handed over to the hospital, and the surgery is scheduled for early tomorrow morning. Tears streamed down Luna's face. If the surgery is cancelled, Devin might not get another chance. Harrison looked at the crying Luna and then at my calm face. After a long pause, he said in a heavy tone, "Mom. Devin's heart condition is very serious. If he misses the surgery, he might not survive past this month." I turned to my parents-in-law. "Have you seen clearly? This is your good son, who gave up his biological son for an illegitimate child." My mother-in-law staggered, holding on to the wall to keep from falling. "And what about Ethan? The kidnappers have issued their final ultimatum. If they don't see the money within an hour, we will never see Ethan alive again." My father-in-law was speechless, his eyes bloodshot as he slapped Harrison across the face. "Beast. Are you even human?" At that moment, Harrison's phone rang again. The living room instantly fell into complete silence. Harrison trembled as he answered the call and turned on the speakerphone. Time was running out, and the kidnapper's voice was colder than before. "Have you decided?" Harrison glanced at Luna, then at me, his Adam's apple moving up and down, but he couldn't say a word. I sneered coldly, took another phone out of my pocket, and calmly dialed another number. "Hello, it's me." My voice was unusually calm, following the plan. Everyone stared at me in shock. Who are you talking to?" Harrison stammered. I ignored him and continued speaking into the phone. "Bring her son along too." Luna's face instantly turned pale. What did you say?" "My son? What are you planning to do?" I hung up the phone and smiled coldly. I said, "For a son, a mother can go to any lengths." Harrison suddenly stood up, grabbed my shoulders, and shook me hard. "Are you crazy? Ethan has been kidnapped, and you want to have Devin kidnapped too? What on earth are you thinking?" I let him shake me, the smile on my face growing colder. "You wanted to make a choice, right? Then choose, Savior and Luna's son, or Savior and my son." Harrison was so angry he couldn't speak, loosening his grip on my shoulder and collapsing to the ground like a deflated balloon. Luna screamed, desperately pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the police." "You lunatic." I calmly walked over and snatched the phone from her hand. "Call the police? Fine, then let the police judge who's crazy, me, or you two shameless people." Harrison knelt on the ground, holding on to my leg. "Snow, I'm begging you, please let Devin go. This has nothing to do with him." "Nothing to do with him?" I kicked him away. "If you hadn't given all the money to that bastard, would Ethan have been kidnapped with no money to save him?" Suddenly, Harrison's phone rang again. The time had come, and the kidnapper's voice came through. "It seems you don't intend to save him." Then came Ethan's hoarse crying, "Dad. Mom, save me." Harrison broke down and shouted into the phone, "Wait. Wait. We will pay. Please don't hurt my son." "It's too late," the kidnapper said coldly. "You made your choice." A scream came from the other end of the line, followed by Ethan's shriek, "Dad, save me. Dad. No. Don't." Harrison knelt on the ground, wailing loudly, "I'll pay. I'll pay right now." "Too late," the kidnapper said. Unless what?" Harrison asked anxiously. "You say it, as long as it can save my son, any condition is fine. Unless you make a choice now, whether to save this child or the one in the hospital." Harrison was stunned. How do you know?" "Choose quickly." The kidnapper's voice grew fierce. "Otherwise neither of you will live." Harrison looked at me, then at Luna. cold sweat pouring down his forehead in big drops. Luna leaned forward and grabbed his hand. Harrison. You can't give up on Devin. He's about to have surgery. The in-laws also shouted, Harrison. Ethan is your only son. Under everyone's gaze, Harrison took a deep breath and spoke with difficulty. I choose Devin. I felt my heart instantly immersed in ice water, then burned by fierce fire. So, this is my husband's choice. At that moment, a faint voice came from the door, Dad. Everyone froze, slowly turning their heads to look at the door. Ethan stood there, pale, tears silently streaming down his little face. The living room was deathly silent. Ethan's lips trembled, his eyes filled with tears and disbelief. Dad, don't you want me anymore? Harrison looked as if he had been struck by lightning, stunned, his face instantly drained of all color. Ethan? How could you? I walked over to Ethan and gently hugged his small, thin shoulders. Baby, did you hear that? Ethan nodded, tears streaming down in big drops. Dad doesn't want me anymore. Dad chose another kid. No. No. Harrison suddenly lunged forward trying to hold Ethan, but I blocked him. Get away. I said coldly, you've already made your choice, you have no right to touch my son anymore. I didn't know Ethan had already come back. Harrison broke down, clutching his hair. I thought he was still with the kidnappers? I sneered, so you could just give up on him and choose your illegitimate child? Grandma collapsed weakly on the sofa, crying while reaching out her hand. Ethan, dear grandson, come to Grandma. Ethan hid behind me, whispering, Grandma, I don't want to go. I'm scared. Grandpa trembled as he walked over and knelt in front of Ethan. Dear grandson, don't be afraid, Grandpa is here. But Ethan pressed his whole body against me, like a frightened little rabbit. Mom, can we go home? I don't want to stay here. All right, Mom will take you home. I gently wiped the tears from his face. Luna finally realized what was going on and looked at the unharmed Ethan in disbelief. What is going on? The kidnapping was fake? I sneered coldly. The kidnapping was definitely real, but the kidnappers were actors I hired. You lied to all of us? Harrison's eyes widened, his voice changed tone. Why did you do this? Why? My voice was filled with biting coldness. I just wanted to see, when you have to make a choice, who you would choose. Now I know the answer, don't I? Harrison opened his mouth but couldn't say a word, only able to kneel weakly on the ground, tears continuously falling. Harrison. Luna stepped forward, gripping his hand tightly. Don't listen to her nonsense. You made the right choice. Devin's surgery is urgent. I coldly sized up this woman and suddenly laughed. Surgery? What surgery? Devin isn't sick at all, is he? Luna's face instantly turned pale. What are you talking about? I took out another document from my bag and gently placed it on the coffee table. This is the hospital's health certificate. Devin is very healthy and doesn't have any heart disease. Impossible. Luna screamed, I have the doctor's diagnosis. Oh? Are you talking about this? I took out another document, a forgery. I have already had someone check it. The signature is not from a cardiologist but from an intern doctor at a clinic your friend runs. Luna's legs went weak, almost collapsing to the ground. How do you know all this? I sneered and looked around. I investigated for a full 2 months. From the first time Harrison secretly took a call in the middle of the night, I knew something was wrong. So I hired a private detective and found out everything about you. Harrison looked up at me in terror. 2 months? You knew all along? What else? I shrugged. Do you think I'm stupid enough not to notice my husband cheating? Then why didn't you say anything earlier? Harrison asked hoarsely. I looked at him, my eyes full of coldness. I wanted to see how shameless you could be. Now it seems you are even more shameless than I imagined. At this moment, mother-in-law slowly stood up, trembling as she pointed at Luna. You bitch. You lied to my son and want to cheat our family's money. Luna hurriedly defended herself. Auntie, I didn't lie. Devin is really sick. Enough, father-in-law shouted angrily, still lying. I see neither of you are good people. Harrison held his head, curling up completely. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. I really didn't know. You don't know? I sneered coldly and took out my phone to play a recording. Luna, don't worry, I've already transferred $500,000 to you, I'll figure out the rest. Devin's illness isn't that serious at all, but as long as we get the diagnosis, we can convince my wife to agree to a divorce, then the property division. The recording abruptly stopped, and the living room fell into a deathly silence again. Ethan tightly clutched my clothes, quietly asking, Mom, does Dad not want us anymore? I crouched down and gently wiped the tears from his face. No, baby, it's Mom who doesn't want Dad anymore. Harrison collapsed and rushed over. Snow, I was wrong, I really know I was wrong. Give me one more chance, I swear I won't do it again. Get away. I pushed him away, don't you understand? It's all over now. Ethan suddenly broke free from my embrace and ran up to Harrison, his small fists pounding hard on his chest. I hate you. I hate you. You lied. You said you'd always love me and Mom. You lied. Harrison seemed drained of all strength, letting Ethan hit him, tears streaming down continuously. Ethan. Dad was wrong. Dad was really wrong. Grandma trembled as she walked over, trying to hold Ethan. Good grandson, don't be like this, Grandma feels heartache. But Ethan dodged her. You all lie too. You said you love me the most, but you only care about Dad. Grandpa's eyes were red. Ethan, Grandpa, and Grandma really love you. No, you don't love me. Ethan shouted loudly, crying, if you love me, why did you let Dad hurt me and Mom? I held Ethan tenderly and said softly, it's okay, baby, don't be sad anymore, let's go home. Just then, the doorbell rang again. I opened the door, and a police officer in uniform stood there. Miss Snow? We received a report saying someone here is forging medical certificates and committing fraud. Everyone was stunned. Luna stepped back in fear. I didn't commit fraud. The police said politely, Ms. Luna, we need your cooperation for the investigation. Also, Mr. Harrison, you are suspected of assisting in fraud and need to come with us. Harrison looked at me in despair. Snow, was it you who reported to the police? I shook my head. No, I just handed the evidence to the right person. Let's go, Ethan. I held my son's hand and turned to leave. Wait. My mother-in-law grabbed the corner of my clothes. Where are you going? I looked back at this former home and said calmly, to our new home. From now on, Ethan and I will live well and you don't need to worry. But, my mother-in-law stomped anxiously, Ethan is our grandson. Ethan suddenly spoke, Grandma, Mom said that family members protect each other. You never protected me and Mom, so you are not my family. The grandmother was struck as if by lightning and collapsed to the ground. The grandfather also wept bitterly. Ethan, don't be like this. The police politely interrupted, sorry to bother you, but we need to take Mr. Harrison and Ms. Luna with us. I held Ethan's hand and walked out the door without looking back. Behind us came Harrison's desperate shout, Ethan. Dad really loves you. Ethan stopped, looked back at his father being escorted by the police, his lips trembling as he said, Dad, Mom said that loving someone means putting them first. You never put me and Mom first, so you don't love us. After saying this, he tightly held my hand and never looked back. When we walked out of the community, Ethan looked up at me, tears still in his eyes. Mom, are we really not coming back? I smiled and patted his head. Yes, baby, we won't be coming back. But don't be afraid, Mom will always be by your side, always putting you first. Ethan nodded, finally showing a faint smile on his face. Mom, I love you. After the kidnapping incident, Ethan and I moved into a small apartment in the city center to start our life anew. My mother came from our hometown to help take care of Ethan so I could work with peace of mind. On moving day, Ethan asked me, Mom, will Dad come to find us? I patted his head and said softly, maybe, but we won't let him disturb our new life. Sure enough, after paying the bail, Harrison appeared at the entrance of our community immediately. "Snow! Ethan!" He shouted outside the security room, but was stopped by the guard from entering, begging, "Please give me one more chance." Hearing his voice, Ethan immediately hid behind me, his small hand clutching my clothes tightly. "Mom, I don't want to see Dad." I calmly called the property management. "There is someone harassing residents at the community entrance. Please handle it immediately." When Harrison was dragged away by several security guards, he kept shouting my and Ethan's names, his voice hoarse as if sandpapered. "Get lost!" I shouted angrily downstairs through the window. "How dare you still come looking for us?" That night, my phone kept ringing, all messages from Harrison. "Snow, please, give me one more chance." "Ethan, Dad really misses you." "I have cut off all ties with Luna, she lied to me. Devin is not my child at all. I am willing to give all my property to you and Ethan, just asking for your forgiveness." I marked all the messages as spam and then turned off my phone. Early the next morning, my mom went downstairs to buy groceries. When she came back, her face looked grim. "Daughter, that Harrison has been squatting at the community gate all night, holding a sign that says, 'I was wrong, please forgive me.'" I sneered coldly, "Let him be, as long as he doesn't come near me and Ethan." 2 days later, I was taking Ethan to school. Just as we reached the school gate, I saw Harrison standing there, holding Ethan's favorite Transformer toy. As soon as Ethan saw him, he immediately shrank behind me. "Mom, I don't want to go to school." I crouched down and gently hugged Ethan. "Baby, don't be afraid, Mommy is here. You go in first, Mommy will handle this." Ethan nodded and, encouraged by me, walked into the school gate. Before leaving, he looked back at Harrison, his eyes full of fear and disappointment. I walked up to Harrison and said coldly, "Do you think bringing a toy can buy back your son's heart?" Harrison knelt on the ground, his eyes red. "Snow, I know I was wrong, I really know I was wrong. Luna has already been taken into custody by the police, and the DNA test results are out. Devin is not my child at all." "Oh?" I sneered. "So back then you gave up your own son for someone else's bastard? How ridiculous." I was deceived. Harrison wept bitterly. "I thought Devin was really sick and really needed surgery. I never expected Luna to even dare to lie about this." "So what?" I looked down on him arrogantly. "Whether it's deception or the truth, it doesn't change the choice you made back then. You chose to give up Ethan, that's a fact. I know I was wrong." Harrison's voice was hoarse. "I have already helped the police collect all the evidence of Luna's fraud. She will be sentenced to many years. I also sent Devin to the welfare home. Now I just want to make things right with you and Ethan." I sneered and interrupted him. "Make things right? On what grounds? Just because you finally realized you were deceived, just because you put that woman in jail, just because you threw an innocent child into an orphanage?" "No." Harrison hurriedly explained. "I donated a large sum to the Welfare Institute to ensure Devin gets the best care." "Enough." I sharply interrupted him. "Do you know what's the most disgusting? It's not that you cheated, not that you gave money to your mistress, but that you could just abandon a child who calls you dad just like that. What does this prove? It proves that in your heart, the child was never the most important. Today you can abandon Devin, tomorrow you can just as easily abandon Ethan." Harrison collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down. "Snow, I really know I was wrong, give me one more chance." I turned and left, leaving one sentence behind: "Give up, it's long over between us." The next day, as soon as I arrived at the company, the receptionist told me someone was looking for me. I went out and saw it was Harrison, holding a large bouquet of roses and a delicate box. "Snow," he looked haggard but tried to smile. "Today is the 13th anniversary of when we met, do you still remember?" I frowned. "Why are you coming to my company?" "I wanted to give you a surprise." Harrison cautiously handed over a box, saying, "Open it and take a look." I reluctantly took the box and opened it. Inside was a divorce agreement and a property deed. "This is our marital home." Harrison's voice trembled a little. "I have already transferred it to you and Ethan's names. Also, I transferred half of the company's shares to you." I have signed the divorce agreement. All the property belongs to you, and I only want visitation rights for Ethan. I snapped the box shut with a cold laugh. Do you think this can buy back my forgiveness? No, Harrison hurriedly explained, I just want to show my sincerity. I really know I was wrong. Enough. I shoved the box back into his hand. I don't need your charity. I will have the lawyer prepare the divorce agreement, and as for visitation rights, don't even think about it. Harrison knelt on the ground, holding on to my leg. Snow, please give me one chance, let me see Ethan, he is my only son. I coldly broke free, get lost. When you chose to abandon him back then, why didn't you think about the fact that he is your only son? Harrison sobbed loudly, I was really wrong. I am willing to spend the rest of my life making amends. I turned and left, leaving behind one sentence, it's too late. That night, I received a call from Harrison's parents, saying he had drunk an entire bottle of white liquor and was now in the hospital fighting for his life. Snow, Grandma was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Harrison really regrets it, he said life is meaningless. Can you come see him? I calmly replied, if he wants to die, that's his business. My life with Ethan will not change because of anything he does. After hanging up, I walked to Ethan's room, looking at his peaceful sleeping face, feeling more determined than ever. No matter what tricks Harrison and his parents use, I will not soften my heart, because I know that those so-called changes and apologies are just their struggles after reaping what they sowed. Truly loving someone means putting them first from the very beginning, not realizing their value only after losing them. After Harrison was discharged from the hospital, I received a formal apology letter from his lawyer, detailing his remorse and compensation plan. Besides the previously mentioned property and shares, he also promised to give Ethan a substantial monthly child support payment and waived all visitation rights, fully respecting my decision. That was clever. I sneered at the letter, knowing that persistent pestering was useless and it was time to change tactics. My mother advised me, daughter, after all, he is Ethan's biological father. Completely cutting off ties is not good for Ethan's future. I shook my head, Mom, you don't understand. Someone like Harrison, who appears to admit his mistakes and submit, has never changed deep down. The reason he's acting like this now is only because Luna deceived him and he found out Devon is not his child. If it really were his child, would he turn back? No. While we were talking, Ethan came home from school, holding a card, looking a bit upset. What's wrong, baby? I crouched down and gently stroked his face. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then handed me the card. Dad came to school today and gave me this. I took the card, which read, Son, Dad misses you very much, please forgive Dad. Dad has cut off all ties with that woman and will never leave you and Mom again. I held back my anger and asked softly, do you want to see Dad? Ethan shook his head, no, he lies. He said he would love me forever, but he chose another kid and doesn't want me anymore. I hugged Ethan tightly, baby, you're so sensible. Tomorrow, Mom will go to school and talk to the teacher to make sure he doesn't come near you again. The next day, as soon as I arrived at school, I saw Harrison standing at the school gate, holding a big backpack covered with keychains of Ethan's favorite cartoon characters. Seeing me, he immediately came over, Snow, please, let me see Ethan. I bought him his favorite backpack. I cut him off coldly, Harrison, if you dare to harass Ethan again, I will apply for a restraining order. I just want to express my apologies. Harrison's eyes were filled with tears. Apologies? I sneered, do you know what kind of nightmares Ethan is having because of you? He dreams that you told him, Dad doesn't want you anymore, then threw him onto the road and left. He wakes up crying so hard he can hardly breathe, asking me if it's because he's not good enough that Dad doesn't want him. Harrison looked as if struck by lightning, his face pale. No, it's not Ethan's fault, it's all my fault. So, I said word by word, stay away from my son, or I won't let you go. I turned and walked into the school, found Ethan's homeroom teacher, explained the situation, and asked her not to let anyone approach Ethan, especially his father. The teacher nodded sympathetically, I understand, Miss Snow. Actually, Ethan's emotions have been unstable lately, sometimes he suddenly cries. When I asked him what was wrong, he said he missed his mom. I felt heartbroken to the point of suffocation. Thank you for telling me. I will pay more attention to Ethan's emotional changes. That afternoon, I went to pick up Ethan early and found a crowd standing at the school gate. In the middle was Harrison kneeling on the ground, with a large sign in front of him, "I am an incompetent father, please forgive me." Ethan saw this scene and was so scared that he hid in my arms. "Mom, can we take another route?" I picked up Ethan and went around the crowd, but I heard Harrison's voice, "Ethan. Dad is here. Dad misses you." Ethan trembled all over, tightly holding on to my clothes. "Mom, I don't want to see Dad." I hugged him tightly with a heart full of pain. "Don't be afraid, Mom will take you home." Just as we were about to leave, Harrison suddenly rushed over and grabbed my arm. "Snow, I beg you, let me say a few words to Ethan, just a few." I scolded sharply, "Let go." The surrounding parents stopped to watch the commotion, some took out their phones to record videos, others whispered. Ethan was so scared he cried, but Harrison persisted in harassing us. At that moment, a middle-aged man came over and pushed Harrison aside. "Sir, please respect the wishes of this lady and child." Harrison glared angrily at the man. "What business is it of yours?" "That's my son." "He is indeed your son," the man said calmly, "but you are clearly disturbing them. If you don't leave now, I will call the police." Harrison wanted to argue further, but several parents gathered around and accused him of scaring the children. Under the pressure of the crowd, Harrison finally left, but before leaving he said, "Snow, I won't give up. Ethan is my only son." The middle-aged man who helped us out politely introduced himself. "Hello, I am Teacher L, the school's psychological counselor." I thanked him gratefully, but he shook his head. "No need to thank me, protecting students is my duty." It looks like the child was frightened. "Do you need my help?" Ethan hid behind me, looking timidly at Teacher L. Teacher L crouched down to Ethan's eye level and said, "Little one, were you very scared just now?" Ethan nodded and whispered, "Yes, I don't want to see Dad." Teacher L said gently, "That's okay, you have the right to choose whether or not to see anyone, including your dad." Ethan seemed to relax a bit and timidly asked, "Really? If I don't see Dad, will I become a bad kid?" "Of course not," Teacher L said firmly, "you are a brave and good child." I was so moved I almost cried. After thanking Teacher L, I took Ethan home. The next day, I received an email from Harrison, which included a psychologist's diagnosis proving that he was undergoing psychological treatment, hoping to become a good father and husband again. The email ended with, "Snow, I do not expect your forgiveness, but please give me a chance to make amends, even if it's just to let me see Ethan from afar." I did not reply and silently deleted the email. At night, Ethan suddenly asked me, "Mom, if Dad really changes, will we forgive him?" I was stunned for a moment and asked back, "Do you want to forgive him?" Ethan lowered his head and said softly, "I don't know. Sometimes I think about Dad, but when I think that he chose someone else's child, I feel very sad." I hugged Ethan. "Baby, forgiveness is not forced, it comes from the heart. If one day, the pain in your heart no longer hurts so much, you will naturally know whether you can forgive Dad." Ethan nodded, seeming somewhat relieved. Days passed by, and the harassment from Harrison and his parents gradually lessened. They seemed to finally understand that forcing things would only make the situation worse. Instead, what came in on time every month was the child support payment, the amount far exceeding the court-mandated sum, along with regular deliveries of books and study materials that Ethan liked. One day after school, Ethan brought home an envelope containing a letter from Harrison to him. "Can I see it?" Ethan asked hesitantly. I nodded. "Of course, it's your letter." Ethan opened the envelope. Inside were only a few brief lines. "Dad knows he made an unforgivable mistake, but Dad really loves you. If you don't want to see Dad, Dad respects your decision. Dad will always wait until the day you are willing to see him. Forever loving you, Dad." After reading the letter, Ethan silently folded it back into the envelope without saying a word. I asked softly, "Do you want to reply?" Ethan shook his head. No, but I also don't want to throw this letter away. I nodded in understanding. Then keep it for now, and decide when you're ready. Half a year later, the divorce procedures between Harrison and me were officially completed. On the day of the divorce, he stood at the courthouse entrance, watching me from afar, his eyes full of regret and despair. "Snow," he called out to me, "I know you won't forgive me, but please believe me, I really love Ethan." I stopped walking and turned to look at him. "Harrison, love is not just words, but actions. If you truly love Ethan, give him time and space to decide whether to forgive you." Harrison nodded, tears silently streaming down. "I will wait, no matter how long." Walking out of the courthouse, I took a deep breath, as if I had shed a heavy burden. Back home, Ethan seemed to sense something and asked me, "Mom, have you and Dad completely separated?" I nodded, "Yes, baby. From now on, it will just be the two of us, mother and son, relying on each other." Ethan was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, "Mom, I think we will be fine because we have each other." I hugged Ethan tightly, feeling incredibly determined. "Yes, we will be fine because we understand what true love is, putting the other first, never betraying, never giving up."